Anyway, this section here in particular is very interesting because God is all these names. God is going to be giving Moses instructions for how to build the tabernacle and all the various accessories that go along with that, which is going to serve as the basis of their Israel's worship system. And the tabernacle itself will be the dwelling place of God. He is going to take up residence in this tabernacle and dwell amongst his people as a presence within this tent, this mobile tent they're making. And this is important, and it's very subtle, and I think most people today probably don't even realize this, but this section is going to be built. It's not even, it's not equal, but these next batch of material from now until the golden calf incident, the narrative of that several chapters from now, is going to be broken up into 7 separate sections that all start with the Lord said to Moses. I mentioned in a previous video that there's going to be lots of times in the Old Testament. We haven't really seen it too much until now. Genesis is pretty straightforward narrative. Exodus, at least the first half of it, is too. But in a lot of these books, especially in the prophet books, when we get there, Moses was a prophet, okay? Especially in the dedicated prophet books that we're going to have later on, there are lots and lots of sections that begin with the Lord said to somebody, or the word of the Lord came to somebody saying. And especially like in Isaiah, okay, which is filled with this. And it's hard to, I personally believe that generally speaking, when this happens, whenever you see the Lord said to somebody, like that's introducing a new section, like introducing a new thought. Like when we get to Isaiah, for example, it's really hard to piece Isaiah together chronologically. Good luck. Okay, some things are pretty obvious, but good luck trying to do that for the whole book. It is my general belief, and again, I don't pretend to be dogmatic about this, but I generally think that whenever you see a new the Lord said, that basically is introducing a new section of thought and should be considered at least somewhat distinct from the material you just got done reading. It's hard to date these. It's hard to date these sayings, unless they give you a date. Sometimes the prophets will give you the date. Sometimes the prophets will tell. Ezekiel, for example, was pretty reliable about giving us the date of the time frame in which the word of the Lord came to him. But they don't all. Like Isaiah does not do that. Isaiah does that in a couple of spots, but for the most part, just a long series of sayings. So here, I think we have 7 sections of material broken up by these headings. The Lord said. Now they're not equal. They're not even. They're not even in length. Okay, there's going to be one long one at the beginning and then 6 short ones, and the end of the Sabbath day. And this is important because it's a parallel for the creation story about God designing His creation in the 7-day period ending with the Sabbath as a place for Him to take up residence and dwell with His creatures. And that's exactly what He's giving instructions to Moses for here. They are going to be developing this tabernacle system, which is again meant to result in a dwelling place for God to take up residence with His people. So this section here and the Genesis 1 narrative of the 7 days of creation are linked stylistically and thematically in that regards. This, to Moses, would be more important than Genesis 1. We don't think of it that way. But to Moses, this material ranks higher on the list of priorities than the stuff he wrote in Genesis 1. Genesis 1 is patterned after this, not vice versa. And we don't think of it that way these days. In fact, I think a lot of people don't even read the second half of Exodus, and if they do, their eyes just glaze over this stuff and they don't even realize it. But let's go on, shall we? This is Exodus 25, starting at the beginning of the chapter. Moses, again, is up on Mount Sinai. He's confirmed the covenant with God. He's up there alone as the representative of the nation. And now the Lord is going to be giving him instructions for how to build and maintain this proper worship system for the Lord, so he can dwell with them and be their God, as they will be his people. The Lord said to Moses, "Tell the Israelites to bring me an offering. You are to receive the offering for me from each man whose heart prompts him to give." These are the offering women could give too, by the way. This isn't gender limited here. These are the offerings you are to receive from them: gold, silver, and bronze, blue, purple, and scarlet yarn and fine linen, goat hair, ram skins dyed red, and hides of sea cows. There's a little footnote here. That's it. That is dugongs. This is not stuff that we necessarily consider a prized offering today, but it did matter to them back then. Acacia wood, olive oil for the light, spices for the anointing oil and for the fragrant incense, and onyx stones and other gems to be mounted on the ephod and breastpiece. Now, we haven't heard any mention so far of an ephod or a breastpiece. This is one of those things where it becomes difficult to tell exactly how this is being written down. Moses, of course, already knows about the ephod and breastpiece. So, again, as we saw back in Genesis, is he transplanting his knowledge back onto the characters who didn't previously have it, or is it just being introduced this way without comment or insight? You know, it's just kind of one of those things. There's always going to be some fuzziness there. Moses did this a lot with Genesis, where he had the characters speak and act in ways that were according to the Israelite worship system, but that the characters at the time, not being Israelites, since the nation didn't exist yet, not being under the covenant of Moses, since it didn't exist yet, the covenant of the law, they would have had no way of knowing that stuff. Does that mean that they did it and just didn't know what they were doing, or they have some way? It's hard to say, really hard to say. Same thing here for the ephod and breastpiece. God is presenting Moses with this plan. Has Moses heard of the ephod and breastpiece before? Who knows? At any rate, we're going to go into the details of that as we go. Then have them make a sanctuary for me, and I will dwell among them. Make this tabernacle, and so that's God's plan has always been to dwell among the people. Make this tabernacle and all its furnishings exactly like the pattern I will show you. Have them make a chest of acacia wood. Now, this is not the sanctuary. This is part of the sanctuary. The sanctuary we're talking about here in verse 8 is a tent. Okay, we're skipping that and talking first of all about this ark, a box, a throne, really, because God's presence will literally be sitting on top of this thing. Have them make a chest of acacia wood, 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide, and 1.5 cubits high. Now, according to my little footnotes down here, that's 3 3/4 feet long, 2 1/4 feet wide and high. Now, there's going to be a lot of measurements in the upcoming text chapters, because we're going to be measuring all this stuff, the curtains, all the stuff, the altar. I'm not going to bother reading out the footnotes. It honestly isn't that important to us today, because we don't have to make a tabernacle like this today. These instructions are not binding on us today. We do not have to go out and build our own tabernacles today. So I'm not going to worry too much about the physical dimensions or natures of these things. If you're interested in that, you can look up the details yourself. There's only so much of this that I can really sit through anyway, because this next batch of chapters is going to be very dry reading. Overlay it with pure gold, so the chest itself is made of wood, but it's going to be overlaid with gold, both inside and out, and make a gold molding around it. Cast 4 gold rings for it, and fasten them to its 4. By the way, where did they get all this gold? Well, they got that from the Egyptians. Remember how God had them plunder the Egyptians when they left Egypt? Well, this is what they got. He did it. He had them do it for. They have all this wealth they got from Egypt. And by the way, Egypt itself got that wealth from the Pharaoh of Joseph's time, when he seized all the property and all the land of the Egyptians, which is what led to Egypt's prosperity, which would end up passing on to the Israelites when they left. And that, in turn, goes into the tabernacle. See how it works? Cast 4 gold rings for it, and fasten them to its 4 feet, with 2 rings on one side and 2 rings on the other. Then make poles of acacia wood and overlay them with gold. So the poles are also wood with a gold overlay. Insert the poles into the rings on the sides of the chest to carry it. So the rings are attached to the feet, which are underneath the chest because it's what holds the chest up, and apparently off to the sides somehow. We don't have the pattern. Whatever pattern God is showing Moses, a blueprint, I think you just assume it's like some sort of blueprint. Whatever blueprint or pattern God is showing Moses about this stuff, we don't have that anymore. So we cannot, with completely confidently, build these things because we don't know exactly what they look like or exactly how they were to be built. The instructions we have that are left in this written text are incomplete. We could build something that would be like a facsimile of it or a replica of it, but it can't be the exact thing. We don't know exactly how they did it because we don't have the pattern. We don't have the blueprint. Insert the poles into the rings on the sides of the chest to carry it. The poles are to remain in the rings of this ark. They are not to be removed. Then put in the ark of the testimony. Then put in the ark the testimony, which I will give you. That refers to the tablets on which are written the commandments of God, which he says here he'll give to them. So those haven't actually been written yet, apparently. We got the instructions themselves back in chapter 20. But it says in chapter 20 verse 1 he spoke the words to them. So they have not yet been written down. The first set of tablets are going to be broken anyway, and that hasn't happened yet either. Make an atonement cover, this is basically the lid of the box, of pure gold. So this is not to be wood with a gold overlay. This is pure gold. 2.5 cubits long and 1.5 cubits wide. And make 2 cherubim out of hammered gold at the ends of the cover. Again, this is pure gold. This is hammered gold. Make 1 cherub on one end and the second cherub on the other. Make the cherubim of one piece with the cover at the 2 ends. Now we don't know what there's no explanation here of what a cherub is or what one looks like. At no point is there any insight given into how Moses knew what a cherub was or how the Israelite craftsmen knew how to make something that looked like a cherub. That's just taken for granted. Same thing when we read about the cherubim being put at the entrance to the Garden of Eden to guard the way back and forth, to keep man and woman from going back in there and eating of the tree of life at the end of Genesis 3. There's no commentary or extra information on that thing, that cherubim, what it means, what it is, or how they knew what it was. Same thing here, it's just mentioned. The knowledge of what it was is just taken for granted. It's not explained where that came from or how they got it. The cherubim are to have their wings spread upward, overshadowing the cover with them. The cherubim are to face each other, looking toward the cover. Place the cover on top of the ark and put in the ark the testimony, which I will give you. There, above the cover between the 2 cherubim that are over the ark of the testimony, I will meet with you and will give you all my commands for the Israelites. This is basically going to be his throne. He's going to sit on top of this thing, essentially. There's going to be a box. It's going to have a lid. A part of this lid, like attached to the lid, like fastened to it, are going to be these statues of these cherubim. And they're going to be facing each other, and they're going to have these wings that are somehow going to stretch out towards each other, which form like a little seat somehow. And maybe these are these are the wings. I don't know. I don't know how it looked. You can look up on Google and type in Ark of the Covenant and see all kinds of theoretical sketches or drawings of how it looked, but we don't really know exactly how it looked. At any rate, the wings of these cherubim statues are going to form a little seat for God to sit on somehow in his presence. Make a table of acacia wood, 2 cubits long, 1 cubit wide, and 1.5 cubits high. Overlay it with pure gold, and make a gold molding around it. Also make around it a rim, a handbreadth wide, and put a gold molding on the rim. Make 4 gold rings for the table and fasten them to the 4 corners where the 4 legs are. The rings are to be close to the rim to hold the poles used in carrying the table. That's how they carry these things around, is by poles. Make the poles of acacia wood, overlay them with gold, and carry the table with them. And make its plates and dishes of pure gold, as well as its pitchers and bowls for the pouring out of offerings. Put the bread of the presence on this table to be before me at all times. So this stuff was meant to be moved. These poles are meant to provide a way for them to pick it up and carry it around. They would pick it up by the poles, rest the poles on their shoulders, and then carry it around. Of course, there'd be more than one guy doing this. In fact, carrying the stuff around is going to be an entire task of one of the branches of the Levites. There's going to be a set of Levites whose job will be literally to take this stuff down and carry it around and set it back up again. So this stuff was meant to be moved. It's designed to be mobile. Make a lampstand of pure gold and hammer it out, base and shaft. Its flower-like cups, buds, and blossoms shall be of one piece with it. 6 branches are to extend from the sides of the lampstand, 3 on one side and 3 on the other. We recognize this as the shape of the menorah. 3 cups shaped like almond flood. I don't know if that's exactly how this lampstand looked, but that's how their lampstands today look, which are patterned after this. 3 cups shaped like almond flowers with buds and blossoms are to be on one branch, 3 on the next branch, and the same for all 6 branches extending from the lampstand. And on the lampstand there are to be 4 cups shaped like almond flowers with buds and blossoms. A lot of flower-based imagery here. 1 bud shall be under the first pair of branches extending from the lampstand, a 2nd bud under the 2nd pair, and a third bud under the 3rd pair, 6 branches in all. The buds and branches shall be all of one piece with a lampstand, hammered out of pure gold. So this is not meant to be wood with a gold overlay. This is meant to be pure gold. Then make it 7 lamps and set them up on it so that they light the space in front of it. Its wick trimmers and trays are to be of pure gold. A talent of pure gold is to be used for the lampstand and all these accessories. See that you make them according to the pattern shown you on the mountain. Again, we don't have this pattern anymore. Hang on a second. Okay, this could be tricky. I have to be really careful when I shift position these days because the left armrest of this chair is going to fall off. It's breaking off as we speak, and the more pressure I put on it, just the more it breaks away. So whenever I do these shifts, because I'm a big guy and I like to shift around in my chair, whenever I do that, pressure is put on it, and the more pressure is put on it, the more it breaks away. This lampstand is very plant-like in its descriptions, isn't it? What all sorts of plant terms have we heard here? Branches, buds, almond flowers. This is a callback to the garden here. And we're going to see this more later when we get into the tabernacle itself. That they're going to have garden, and the temple will be this way too. They're going to have garden imagery woven into this thing. So entering this tabernacle, this holy space, will be like entering the garden again. This lampstand itself might be patterned after the tree of life, to be specific. And so there is just this constant. We don't really see this. Our eyes pass over this, and I don't think we register at all the significance of some of these things. But what they're basically doing is designing a new garden. What this tabernacle is meant to be is it's meant to take the place of the Garden of Eden, to be God's new dwelling place of His people. With the cherubim mentioned and all these flower and plant images, first of all with this lampstand, and later on with the tabernacle curtains and all that. The idea here is that when you enter this space, this holy space, to meet and commune with God, you're returning to the garden where mankind met and communed with God. which again means that the story of the garden in Genesis 1 is patterned after this. Moses would have experienced this. The Israelites would have experienced this. When he's writing this down, or when he's preserving it at least for the generations to come, he's preserving the memories of something that they experienced. And so when he writes Genesis and he begins the story and begins the narrative of how they got to this point, he's patterning the beginning of that after what they have seen here. That's why I believe that if Moses were alive today, and you can ask him whether or not, which part of this material he considered more important, I believe he'd tell you he considered this more important. This is the basis for what we read in Genesis. This is God coming to dwell with his people Israel. And the account in Genesis is designed to be a pattern of that. Actually, let me go ahead and start a new video.